there, art nerds. So we're doing something a little bit different. Today we're not talking about art supplies, we're talking about art studio supplies. And I'm gonna talk today about some of my favorite supplies that I use all the time. And I would love to hear what you use and what you recommend down in the comments below. So as you're watching, if there's something I'm totally snoozing on, please let me know. I would love to discover it. I'm always looking for new, exciting studio finds that can make my life easier. I am not gonna really talk about organization today because, as you guys know, I have no organizing skills whatsoever, and I probably need to get the help of a professional for that. So if you guys have studio supply recommendations, like organization recommendations, let me know that as well. We've been looking at pegboards. I have an Ames unit. I have all these little mini drawer things. But the thing about organizing art supplies is then you need something to organize your organizers. So if you have any good recommendations for organizing my organizers, I would really appreciate it. That would be a really big help. I do talk about a couple. I talk about map drawers and I talk about cutlery organizers. So stay tuned for that. But I'm really looking forward to showing you guys what I use. And then in a follow-up video, we're gonna go looking for studio supplies, not art supplies, studio supplies on a budget. And we're gonna hit multiple shops. So if you're just starting out or you wanna find some hidden gems, make sure you look for that. So if you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Becca Hilburn. I am a comic artist and illustrator. I make the watercolor comic 7-inch Kara, and I also have a beautiful cottagecore coloring book, Curious Little Things, and you can find more of my art on these social media sites here. I think it's pretty important to talk about rulers. I have tried a bunch of different rulers and French curves in my life with varying degrees of success. The kind of rulers I happen to like the best are the Japanese rulers with the gridding on them that also have an inking edge, although to be honest, I will just as often use the other edge. Now, an inking edge is a metal edge, and it's designed so that the ink doesn't seep under the ruler and by capillary action bleed into what you're drawing. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. That's more of a thing if you're inking with like a nib or if you're inking with a brush. It's gotten to the point though where I'm pretty comfortable even doing ruler work with a brush pen. Just take some practice and a steady hand, but I do happen to really like the Japanese grid rulers. Now, Alvin has started making imperial grid rulers, and by imperial I mean they use inches, not centimeters. And I like the grids because it can make it really easy to line things up and square things out. This is one from Alvin, and it has an inking edge on the side of it, and a good clear acrylic ruler really doesn't have to run you too much. I got that one this year, paid $12.25 at my local brick and mortar, and that's a good, nice long ruler. I also happen to really like T-squares because, as I've told you guys before, I can't square things up for the life of me. T-squares are designed to help. As you guys can see with this illustration, my printer actually didn't print it square because this is the top of the paper and this is the bottom and it's off kilter. I think the feed kind of loaded it in funny. So having these kind of rulers to make sure I'm squaring everything up is really helpful. Typically, I like to roll with a 12-inch and a 24-inch ruler. This is actually a Spaceball Chinese T-square, but it is also an imperial, so this is really helpful. The 24-inch is great because I typically work at somewhat larger sizes, as well as like the 11x17 of a comic artist. And then I've had this forever. I've used the heck out of it. I'm not really sure what exactly it's for. If you know, I think it's about like lining up text and ruling out text, but it's a clear acrylic ruler with a magnifying edge. I don't really use that often, but it also has guides on the inside. It's just a good ruler. And the reason I like clear acrylic is you can see through it. It makes it so much easier to actually line things up. So my big suggestion would be clear plastic or clear acrylic rulers. Something with a grid on it is really helpful. And if possible, have a few T-squares handy. Since we're talking about supplies, I wanted to talk about some of my favorite watercolor supplies. So We have here some plastic gator board. It is the same thing as political signboard, so if you time it correctly, you can get some free. They also have it at, like, sometimes they have it at Michael's, sometimes at Walmart, sometimes at David's Art Center, so you can find it. You can also order it online. Surrounding this illustration is 3M blue painter's tape, not the crepe kind. I mean, it is the crepe kind, sorry, not the low tack, fragile, whatever. They make a bunch. The original is the way to go. Then surrounding it, we have bulldog clips size large and binder clips size large. And when I'm stretching a watercolor sheet, I'll have them shut like this. And what this does is it holds everything kind of down, because as you guys can see, I cut my gator board, basically I cut it into fourths, so it should fit a comic page. Doesn't quite fit a 9x12 watercolor sheet of paper, so I have to make do, but that is a way that I make do. This is my new watercolor palette. Basically, I took an empty pencil tin, spray painted it like a million times. It was so time consuming. I've got a video about that. And then I glued little neodymium magnets to the backs of my half pans. So we have this really modular watercolor palette. Now for mixing my color, I do have some traditional ceramic palettes, but I also have some little sauce cups that I got at the Asian market. Got this recently, really like this, as well as some cheap ceramic plates that you can get them at Dollar Tree. For my water cup, this is a Faber-Castell Click and Go, and it has a paint puck down in the bottom of it. And I like these because A, you can rest your brushes along the top. That's what the crenellation does. It is collapsible. I don't travel with them, but it does not look like a drinking cup. It does not look like a mug of water. It looks like a watercolor cup. So I don't make the mistake of drinking my watercolor water. And then for spritzer bottles, I do have like some nicer bespoke ones, but I also have like some cheap, had these forever ones labeled alcohol. Joseph put a little fire sticker on it so that we would know it was alcohol. And then water. And then for watercolor illustrations, I like to use Viva paper towels. Now, not seen is I actually have these. These are painting props. I think they're made by Acrylic, and it's like U-lift or something, because when you are painting, you actually want your watercolor illustration to be slightly elevated, and that allows me to do just that. And then on my desktop surface is Teflon baking sheets. I actually have a pack. I need to replace mine. And what I like about these is they are non-stick, so I can really abuse the heck out of the surface, and you can wipe them down. So if you're using if you're using alcohol markers on it, easy to clean. Alcohol inks, easy to clean. Watercolor, easy to clean. I haven't tried acrylic. Would probably be pretty easy to peel off, but even though it is very ugly and it makes for a really ugly recording surface, it's really versatile. While I've got all this stuff out, I wanted to talk about a few more studio supplies that I get a lot of use out of and that I'm very picky about. One of them is a scrubber watercolor brush. I've had a couple different scrubber watercolor brushes in the past. This one is a golden Taklon one, so it's actually a lot softer than my other scrubber brush. And this is made by Zenni. It has shorter bristles than your typical watercolor brush. And this is meant to lift up watercolors. So if you painted an area and you want to lift the color back up, you dip this in water, you kind of paint it on the area, let the water kind of soak in there, and then you just gently scrub at the pigments and dab it with a paper towel. If you want to get like a finer line, like lifting up hairlines or grass, you can use it this way to do it. Do you have to have a scrubber brush? No, but it can be handy, and I've enjoyed using this one. And Royal Langnickel's Zen line, which I talked about in one of my watercolor brush live streams, these are not bad at all, especially for the price. I am honestly kind of impressed with these, and I'm so glad I have found a good student grade synthetic watercolor brush that I can actually recommend to other people. That is harder to find than you might think. So holding my watercolor illustration down are Chinese watercolor weights. These are typically used for traditional Chinese watercolor because with Chinese watercolor, you're working on a felt and you are not stretching the watercolor paper. So these just hold it down. But what I like about these is there are some things you cannot stretch for whatever reason, whether it's not worth the time to stretch it or you don't want to wet the whole thing, or there are a lot of reasons why you might not want to stretch something. These will help hold your watercolor illustration in place and will help prevent them from buckling. And generally with these, they are 2 to a set. I own 2 sets because sometimes I like to put them, if it's like a really long and narrow piece, I'll have a top and bottom one and then one on each side. But I bought these kind of on a whim. I use them a lot more than I thought I would use them, and I really like them. They're also not that expensive. They come in a bunch of different materials, sizes, and shapes, but I happen to like the metal bar ones the best. They just work really well for what I like to do. I am really picky when it comes to pencil sharpeners, and the best pencil sharpeners I've found are these Coom. You can use the aluminum or the magnesium or the brass ones. They're all really good. And while they look like your standard cheap sharpener, and this is the cheaper version, I like these because I tend to lose pencil sharpeners. So the cheaper ones, they're small enough to fit in my desk drawer. If I lose them, they're no big deal. If one of my students takes it home with them by accident, not really a big deal. They're about $1 each-ish, depending on where you get them. You can replace the blades. They sell the replaceable blades for these as well. I've just never done that because I could see myself slicing my finger with that. I am very, very clumsy, but I really like these. I use these with my expensive pencils. I also use them with my Prismacolor pencils, which are notorious for snapping, and these are some of the best sharpeners I have found, even for finicky Prismacolors. So I happen to really like the Coom sharpeners. I've had a few over the years. I actually have a really nice glass bottle one that is very, very cute. This one here, it's the anniversary bottle. And frankly, I just use this thing even more. Don't really know why, but I do. Oh, and try not to get it on my watercolor illustration. Look, they are almost the same sharpener inside. The only this one has little grips, but the only real difference is that this is designed to go into a bottle, and that gives you a little bit more room to hold your sharpenings. But ever since Joseph replaced my teeny tiny step trash can with a very large, ugly pink plastic trash can from when I was in college, he found it when we were cleaning out my old bedroom, and it holds so much more garbage. I can just like lean over the garbage can and sharpen it into this. So one thing that I'm not going to show you, but I am going to highly recommend is a good, doesn't have to be expensive, needs to be big, a good garbage can. Because I had the cute little step garbage can. It was very cute, so aesthetic. That thing didn't hold anything. That's fine for like, you know, bathroom Q-tips, things like that. But the big garbage can works so much better for what I'm doing. So in a St. Louis Art Supply unboxing, we talked a little bit about droppers. And I've been currently using these. I think these are from Kuretake. They have the milliliters. But you know what? I just reordered like my big, cheap, old-fashioned droppers. And I'm going to probably switch to those because they just hold more. I don't need to measure a precise amount of water, at least not when I'm doing an illustration like this or comic pages. So droppers are super helpful. They're a great way to either activate your paints if you don't want to use a spritzer bottle, or to add water to, you know, a pre-mixed watercolor situation where you don't want to pour it, but they don't have to be the fancy ones. They can be the cheap ones. You can get the bulk ones. I'll have them all linked for you guys though down in the description below, and let you be the judge. A little bit earlier I mentioned the blue tape. This is it. This is the, I think it's 3M, but it says Scotch here, but I think they're owned by the same people. I'm sorry. I'll double check that and get back to you guys. But it's the Scotch Blue brand, and it's the kind with just the crepe paper surface. So not the foam kind, not the green kind, not the delicate kind, not regular masking tape. I've seen people use all of those and it works for them, and that's great, but this is what works for me, so that's what we're going to talk about. Something else that works for me is the kind of expensive Nichiban Japanese masking tape. That's this here. This is not good for bigger things like this, but it is so good for bookmarks, postcards, smaller things. It holds really well. I don't have a problem with water seepage, and it removes cleanly without tearing up the paper, which can sometimes happen with the blue tape and often happens with the other tapes that I've mentioned. You guys saw my color pencils earlier, but I didn't show you guys my, wow, I'm gonna have to pull the camera back. Give me a sec. I didn't show you guys my color pencil binder because this thing is huge. So I've had a few different color pencil cases over the years. This one is specifically for my watercolor pencils because, as you guys see, I do use watercolor pencils pretty frequently to add final touches and details to my art. And I wanted something that would grow as I continue to amass my hoard. I got this one on Amazon. I actually did a full review of this, but what I like about this is it's an actual binder. So like you don't have to buy the set. Honestly, you could just buy a binder and then put the pages in the binder. They do sell the pages in either sets or individually. So when I run out of room, I can expand it if I want to, but I actually like that it was a zipper case and it has a carrying strap and it has a handle on the back. That makes it much easier for me to use. This thing gets a lot of use, but it doesn't look like it's all worn and torn. It doesn't look all chewed up. I appreciate that as well, because even though I'm not like the biggest on aesthetics, my art supplies don't have to look like no one ever used them. I do like them to last a while and to not look like just total garbage. So this binder has done a good job with that. As you guys can see, there are elastic straps that hold the color pencils in place. There's also pockets on the front. There is one in the back actually. I'm kind of surprised by that. That could actually hold like a pad of watercolor paper if you wanted it to. You could, to an extent, DIY your own with this one, but sometimes it's honestly easier and cheaper just to buy it ready done, and then you're not playing the guessing game of like, you know, where do I find these parts? What do I do to make this work? Sorry, I am trying to put my color pencils away and talk to you guys, and I am just not able to do two things at one time. But I have these sorted by brand for the most part because that makes sense for me. Also, they handle a little bit differently. So these are Caran d'Ache Museum Aquarelle. So they are pigment based. These are Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer. They're India ink based. These are Derwent Inktense, which are India ink as well. And Super Color 2, which I don't actually know. I am sure one of you guys knows. So please let me know down in the comments below. But this is just such a handy studio supply. For a lot of people, the size of this binder is going to be overkill. It's going to be way more than they need, but you could have all of your color pencils in here, your watercolor pencils in here. You could put, if you have short brushes, you could have your brushes in here. You can have drawing pencils. Like this could be an entire studio in a convenient carrying case if that was what you wanted, or if that's what you need. If you travel a lot, then that could be a solution for you. But this has worked pretty well for me in the time that I've had it. I'm pretty satisfied with it, and I wanted to share it with you guys in case it would make your studio life a little bit easier. All right, I apologize for the mess. I'm not necessarily recommending that you have a bar area in your watercolor supplies. We happened to buy a house that was built in the late 70s that happened to have a bar, and I was like, oh, this will be perfect for watercolor. So instead of taking it out, we left it in, and it's become a good workstation. So we're talking about studio supplies. So here are some of the ceramic plates and palettes that I have in a dish drainer. There's some more of them in a paper sorter. This is what I used to use to dry my palettes. I have a bunch soaking in the sink because I need to clean them. I have a makeup brush holder over here to allow some brushes to dry. I also have one of these brush hanging systems, which in Norco, when we had this attached to the windowsill next to a sink, I really liked it. But now it just kind of gets in the way and bumps on my head a whole lot. So I need to find a better place for it. I also have a pile of brushes that need to be cleaned. Now, for cleaning brushes, I like to use Old Masters soap. You guys can see it gets pretty well used. And then to clean the palettes, I like to use a melamine sponge. So you guys have asked what these red caps, why they're on these. It is so that I can hang it like that so they can dry with the brush down, so that gravity will help hold the shape of the brush and they don't end up all splayed out. So I talked earlier about what I would use for stretching watercolor pages, and I figured why not show you guys the supplies. So usually I would use those bulldog and binder clips that we talked about, but I wanted to try some different types of clips. So I have like some metal chip style clips with like a silicone buffer. I've also got these large clips that are like what you would attach to a literal clipboard. I've got these long clips that I got from St. Louis Art Supply. They're a little bit expensive. I have my gator board. It's been cut down to size. I have a spray bottle full of clean filtered water because I live in an area that has a lot of chemicals and minerals in the water. I have a cup of clean water. I have a hake brush, or kind of like a softer goat bristle brush. You could use a mop for this. I used to use a mop for this. This just seems to be faster. I have Viva paper towels, and I like these because they don't have any dye on them, and they also have like a fabric texture. So instead of leaving like that weird dotty texture on my watercolor paper, they don't really leave much at all. And that's basically it. So I have a lot of videos where I demonstrate my stretching process. Not into doing that today, so I'm not, but I wanted to show you guys the supplies that I use for that. This is also my secondary drafting table. We bought this through a government auction. It was a CAD table. Joseph put new vinyl on it, so it looks a lot better. This is a paraliner. It's so that you can do perfectly parallel lines going all the way down. Generally, I haven't used it yet. I'm not saying the opportunity won't come along. I would probably use it with an X-Acto blade to get really nice cuts though. And this is supposed to be a keyboard tray, but I actually use this to hold painting supplies, and I have a cart next to it to hold painting supplies as well. This is another instance of pardon my mess, but since we're talking about studio supplies, I wanted to talk about some big ones. So we have the printer and we have the scanner, and I joke that the scanner was my actual engagement ring because it costs more than my actual engagement ring. So this is a large format Epson, bunch of numbers here. I'll just show you guys. There we go. And the reason we got this is that the 3-in-1 large format scanners like this are often good for large format black and white work, and they're terrible for large format watercolors. They just blast them out, and it takes a lot of effort to color correct them. And I used to have a small Canon scanner, which is great if you work on a size that will fit on the scanner bed, but I paint watercolor comic pages, and so we'd have to scan them in parts and then use under automate, there's like a photo merge, and that works sometimes. That also fails horribly sometimes, and it's a lot of effort to stitch the page together. So you probably don't need a large format scanner like this unless you are a traditional media watercolor artist who likes to work large format and your library doesn't have anything like this, or you don't have access to a school that has a large format scanner like this. You probably don't need one. If you absolutely must have one, I would recommend checking government auction sites, because as schools are liquidating some of their traditional media stuff, you may be able to get scanners like this on sale. So as for the printer, I had a Canon Pixma Pro 9000 forever. I had two of them. I used them both to death. I love them. They no longer make the one I had in the size that I need to print comic pages. So I asked around, a friend generously recommended this one and did a test to show me that the inks are water soluble. I really appreciate that effort. I jokingly call this thing the Gundam because it transforms. This thing, when it comes to large format printing, is so finicky about how it wants the paper. And then the inks, they are water soluble, but you have to catch them in the first couple days. Otherwise, they permanently bond with the paper. And I actually have a review for this thing that's been sitting in progress on my phone forever. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and maybe I will find the gumption to finish that review. Below are also some map cabinets talking about buying things at government auction. We were watching for this for a long time. We actually bought a set of 5 of them. Several had come up and we'd lost all the bids, and then finally we won one. It is ugly, but it is huge. It is good for large format papers since they're map drawers. They're designed to store papers. We have these like cutlery dividers in here to make it a little bit more subdivided and approachable for art. These things can hold a lot. They hold a lot in flat lay, so if you work in a large format, this could be a great option for you. The rest of them are in the craft room, and we have a lot of the art supplies in them. Joseph did them as like a flat lay, and that's pretty cool because when you pull it out, you can see like everything in the drawer. If only it had a clear front. Another pardon my mess, and this time a pardon the lighting. So this is in the great room, so the audio quality is going to be just high class as well. So this is my toner printer. The other one you saw was an inkjet printer with water soluble inks. This is a toner printer. It runs on a completely different system. If you're printing zines at home, and a lot of zines, this is a good way to go. If you are a teacher and you're printing student materials and you're doing it on your own dime, this can be more economical. If you want to print line arts that are water and alcohol marker safe, this is the way to go as well. Do you need one? Probably not. Do I need a photo accurate printer because I'm doing my prints at home? Absolutely not. I let cat prints do it. So it kind of becomes a matter of what you need, and since I teach and I print line arts and I print zines, this thing gets a lot of use. And then we have, this is one of the old Canon Canoscans. Sorry, it's got stuff on it. It doesn't get a lot of use right now. So if you work small, these are great for watercolors because they can capture all that detail. These are actually meant to scan like film slides originally and photo negatives. So they're really good at capturing that detail. So that wraps us up. Oh, also these things are usually like, I haven't checked recently. I paid around $89 for this one. So they're fairly accessible for a high quality scanner that's going to have good fidelity if you're a watercolor artist. Okay, pardon my mess again. I have ADHD and we have moved multiple times and I just can't this time get myself together and organized. So it is horrible. It is really messy. It is not aesthetic and we really need to like do something about it. But this is my second desk. So this is a CAD desk. And what that means is, I'm going to try to show you guys without showing too much. So there is a cabinet underneath that's meant to hold a computer. It's got watercolor supplies in there right now. There is a keyboard tray, which I actually use as kind of like a tab array for art supplies when I'm painting here. And there is a pencil board, and then there's one of those Alvin like straight line things, but we never cleaned it off properly when we took it off and reinstalled it, so I'm a little afraid to use it. And Joseph put new vinyl on the tabletop for me. And we paid less than $100 for this thing. It's solid wood. That's another government auction thing right there. So for the last part of art supplies or studio supplies that I use, I'm going to sit outside and enjoy some sunshine because that is very important. But I wanted to talk about some of the things that are not necessarily necessary for every artist. So these are things that I use that you might find helpful. So one of the first things I want to talk about is my Aeron chair. That is a $1,000 office chair, and we purchased it as an investment about 6 years ago after a long stint of working on, I think it was like freelance for a company I was working for at the time, and my back just gave out. I could not move for 3 days. could not get up off the floor for 3 days. And since Joseph worked in an office environment at Vanderbilt at the time, and they were buying new chairs, I actually could test out some of the different options, and we opted to get an Aeron. So even though it is intensely expensive, there are cheaper options available, and they do go on sale sometimes, and you can buy them used. I think it was well worth the money. The only thing I don't like about it initially is that you can't remove the armrests, and I really want to remove the armrests. And we also bought a lift kit for it to just kind of go with my other desk, and now it's super uncomfortable because it's too tall and I'm short and my feet don't rest right. So on that note, I have a floor cushion. Like, you can get them on Amazon. It's one of the curved ergonomic floor cushions that helps some. And I was using a seat cushion, like an ergonomic seat cushion on my Aeron, because where the mesh meets the plastic, it's a hard divide and it cuts right at my legs, and I have restless leg syndrome, so it caused some problems. And the cushion helped a lot, but the cushion is like this tall, and now it makes it like infeasible to sit with the riser kit and the cushion. But those are things that I have used. Now Bowie sleeps on the cushion, so it's still getting used. He loves it. That's his little chair. But those are just different things I've had that have been beneficial. I still have the Aeron chair. I still use it. I'm going to use it until it dies. And I think we got a deal on it. So if you check places like Slick Deals, kind of Google around, check government office auctions or government auctions. Sometimes they're liquidating things like that. You can find it at a better price, you know, just if you're aware and you're savvy. Like, don't just go out and buy one, but like start looking for one a while earlier. Another thing that is really beneficial, but I use it off and on, I don't need it as much anymore because I watercolor rather than drawing and pen and inking everything, is Ace makes a cushioned sleep wrist brace. I'll pull it up on it's the most comfortable wrist brace. I have early onset arthritis, I think partially because I have ADHD and some hypermobility issues, but also because I've overworked my hands and I gave myself arthritis in grad school. So if you have those problems, that wrist brace is one of the most comfortable ones. It does really keep your hands secure, but it's not itchy and it's not uncomfortable. And those of us with ADHD, I know those kind of braces can be really annoying. Compression gloves are also nice. Dritz makes an inexpensive compression glove for sewers that can be good. I actually want to get a neoprene one, like a more serious neoprene one, to help with the hand arthritis. Haven't found one yet, but if you know of one, link it for me because I would love to check that out. So I've talked about having severe migraines on the channel pretty frequently. It is a big part of my life. I am seeing a neurologist. I did get allergy shots as a kid. I have tried 1,000,001 things. So if you also suffer migraines, I have one of my glasses that I have, the blue rim ones, you guys have seen me wear them. Those are actually blue light blocking glasses, but I find they're actually really helpful on migraine days, even if I'm just outside. I got those through Zenni. That's one of the add-on options, so you can get them pretty affordably, and I really like them. 2, I like to use like menthol sticks, headache sticks, because the mint helps me. It doesn't help everyone. I put it under my nose and I put it around, but not in my eyes, and the pain feels so good. It distracts me from the migraine. And also, I don't know if heat works for you. Some of these are microwavable, some of these are not. I have a migraine cape, like an ice cape, that is microwavable. And that's just good because I carry a lot of tension in my back from drawing and painting. So it can be just good for that. I also will sleep if I can in a T-pose and just kind of let everything stretch out while I'm sleeping because I draw like a little T-Rex. And I got that on Amazon. I really like it. Joseph uses it more than I do, so he also really likes it, and he works at a computer all day. Also, like, they sell heating blanket capes, things like that. He lives with one of those, so if heat helps you, there's some good options for that. And then I also have an ice cap that I only use when I have a really, really, really bad migraine. Like, nothing else is working. And that one I think can also be microwaved if you're more of a heat person. And I wanted to bring those up because so many artists are ADHD, like I am, and also suffer migraines or degenerative joint issues. So I wanted to kind of touch on those because those are studio supplies in a way. They're the supplies that make our lives a little bit more a little easier or a little bit better. So I did want to talk about those. So obviously there are probably some studio supplies that I just totally didn't talk about. I looked at this from a super narrow lens as a watercolor comic artist. But if you're an acrylic painter, if you're a printmaker, get with me, printmakers. I want to get back into printmaking. If you do oil painting, your needs are going to be different. So something that could be super cool to do and very helpful to other people and a chance to brag is if you would introduce yourself, talk about what kind of art you make, and then talk about some of your favorite art studio supplies down in the comments below. That would be super cool. And bonus points if you're still living at home, if you like with your parents, if you live in a small space like an RV or a smaller room or a dorm room, or you just have limited space in general, if you would share what are your favorite must-have, cannot live without supplies, not art supplies, but studio organization, the making of the art supplies, down in the description. That would be super cool and probably very helpful to people as well. Now remember, we're going to talk about our studio supplies on a budget in a follow-up video. I hit Dollar Tree, multiple Five Belows, and Walmart to just talk about sourcing studio supplies on a budget. I did not hit Goodwill, mostly because Goodwill can be very variable by your area and can be really hit or miss. I also didn't necessarily talk about like eBay or even government auction sites that much. We did talk about them a little bit here, but those are also good options. So if that sounds exciting to you, if you are looking forward to what these stores have to offer, please consider, if you haven't yet, subscribing and clicking the bell notification and joining us on our art adventure here on this channel, because it is my goal to make art accessible for everyone and to help you make art a habit. So thank you guys so much for enduring my messy studio. Hopefully you found out about some cool things, you got some cool ideas, and hopefully you will share your cool ideas with me down in the description. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys again really soon when we talk about our budget studio supplies. Bye guys!